I finally finished season 2 of The Witcher, and I wanted to share my quick thoughts on it. Before I dive in, be sure to join me down below in the comment section. What did you think about The Witcher season 2? And give me kind of that point of reference where you're coming from with The Witcher. Have you read the books? Have you played the video games? Or is the TV show your first exposure to the world of The Witcher? So what's my background with the show? I started season 1 having not played the video games and barely even knowing that the books existed. I just dove into the show, checking it out because it looked like a nice fantasy epic starring Henry Cavill. That interested me. And there was a lot of, internet buzz about it. So of course I wanted to check it out. And after 3 or 4 episodes, I stopped watching because I had absolutely no idea what was going on. And a couple months later, I don't know how long it was exactly, I read something, I saw a review or something that informed me that the show was non-linear. And I went, oh, well, that makes a lot more sense. I did not know what was going on. So I gave it a second watch. This time I was kind of looking at a chart that kind of showed you the different timelines of the 3 main characters and was looking at the Wikipedia page to kind of flesh out things. And that time I watched it and I got really into it. Once I knew what was going on, it gave me some sort of frame of reference to follow things. Once you got about halfway through the season, you started to see how what was going on with The Witcher was setting up the timeline for Ciri, and Yennefer was her journey was starting to connect with his. I really got invested in the show, and I thought the second half of the season paid off really well what they'd been doing with the nonlinear storytelling, but the show itself did not do a very good job of being accessible to first-time viewers, people that were new to this world. Is very unclear what was going on, and the season didn't do a lot of overt world building, certainly not early on. It just throws you in the middle of this complicated world with all these different factions and deep mythology. And so by the time you get to the end of it, it's done the world building and you understand what's going on, but it didn't do it on the front end. And so I was pretty lost, but became a big fan by giving it a second watch and doing my homework the second time, which generally speaking, if you need to do homework while watching a show, that's not the best way to do a show if you want to win new people over. So if you're someone that checked out season 1 and checked out a few episodes in because you didn't know what was going on, that was me too. And it worked much better when I watched it a second time with doing my homework. So what did I think about season 2? After a 1.5 year long wait for me, 2-year wait for those of you who watched it when it first dropped, what did I think about it? I thought it was okay. It was pretty good. It was decent. It did a lot of things that I really enjoyed, but it also felt like we waited a long time for not quite enough payoff. The season as a whole was really slow, and it kicks off, and the end of season 1 kind of had all of our characters starting to come together, and we get really close, and then one of them gets thrown off far away from our other 2 characters. So it was nice to get these 2 characters together, but you wanted to see all 3 of them together for more of your runtime. And so then she's tossed away in a way that it just took a long time before we got back to her. And that was a bit frustrating for me, making sure my camera's focused on my face. And so that was a little bit disappointing because it just took so long for Yennefer's story to join up with our other 2 lead characters. And season 1 ends with this big epic battle for the continent where Yennefer, steps in as kind of like a hero, and, she's, raining fire and things like that on this gigantic army. It builds this big epic conclusion. And that's just not really how this season worked. This one didn't have that same vibe, despite having some elements like where you could see where they might have been building to something really big. And then you get to the end and it's much more personal, the battle that ends up taking place. So it was kind of one of those ones where I enjoyed each episode. The individual plot lines I thought worked and made sense, but it also felt a little bit like you wanted more. You wanted it to be bigger. You wanted it to progress things further. Like this felt like this, with 8 episodes, should have been the first half of a season or something like that, of getting them together. And I feel like there was enough story here and big twists and turns for about half of a season. And then the second half turns into the big payoff of everything else. And that was kind of generally speaking how I kind of felt about it. where it was a frustrating place to be because, when it came to the dynamic between Gerald and Siri, I thought that was a nice dynamic. I was nervous it was going to be more contentious and more kind of angst to it. And that's not really where they took things. And I appreciated that of the conflict between them had a very different vibe to it of it was more that him as this protector and her wanting to be independent, but not in a manner where she was resentful of him. And I really appreciated that because that just feels like where every show like this ends up going, that the person being protected is resentful of the person protecting them for various reasons. That's not really went with it. I really appreciated the fact that they had a fondness for them and that they didn't really water down Gerald. They didn't make him this softy in the general sense. He wasn't suddenly a warm person, but he's just that character that he's always had, this person of duty. They just make that front and center. And though he made this promise, she's in danger. And so that played out in a way that I thought fit in an interesting way to kind of expand on who he was and flesh him out. And even the way that his interactions with Yennefer have informed who he is in this season. All of that I really appreciated. And then watching her train, wanting to be this better version of herself, all the mythology that they expand about her and how important she is, why everyone's interested in her, kind of building this deep thought. I dug all of that. And then even using Yennefer, who's been off on her own little mini adventure, and her losing her power, and that thing was so important to her, being defined by her power in pursuit of more power. She loses that. And then that becomes an issue of conflict that she's tempted to go after the girl. So that this triangle of people, these two people that are in love, and Geralt will do anything to protect his surprise daughter, and Yennefer will do anything to get her power back. And so you just have this interest. I thought, that was really good direction to take things. That was interesting. It was frustrating because you wanted them to be on the same page, but it was the right, a good type of frustration. But it took so long to get there. It took so kind of stretching things out. And even watching it, was like, there's so many just individual scenes feel very long. And it plays out all the dialogue. And that's kind of even why the season feels so slow, is because we just pause for every line of dialogue, every conversation to take its time to communicate everything and have all the friendliness, all of the different side paths that normal conversations have. It's all in there. So these episodes are an hour and 10 minutes long, hour and 5 minutes long, but don't move the plot along as much as you'd hope. And that was kind of the frustration of the season for me. Some other things kind of going on in it. It was just nice to go back to where our Witchers come from and train and see the camaraderie, see who is the person that kind of mentored Geralt, adding in this element of extinction to the Witchers that's very prominent and felt all throughout this season. Of there's not very many of them, and with each passing year there's fewer of them, and then making the girl a centerpiece and some of what's kind of going on with that, and providing hope plus fear at the same time. All of those kind of ideas, elements that are kind of in the season really worked. Really dug where they were headed with all of that. Everything with kind of this idea of elves being hunted and this conflict because of that. Another just solid thing that just adds tension throughout the runtime while you're watching it. And you can feel us building towards something that we don't quite get to. So all of those elements. There's like a bunch of stuff about it that I really dug. And then just the general feeling at the same time of like, but why did it take us so long to get there? So when you put it all together, I dug the direction they took things, what they did with the characters, the expansion of the world, and the more time I spend in the world of The Witcher, the more I'm fascinated in learning more. And I've already bought The Witcher 3 and want to play the game, and I can't wait to check out the spin-off series that's coming out soon. But I wish that the show hadn't taken so long to get from point A to point D. I think we could have done that in about half as much time and told more story that maybe had a bigger conclusion, a bigger finale to this season than what they went with, which is more personal and like a great little direction that they went. but not as kind of epic as I'd hoping, given how long it took for the season to come out and how big season 1 ended. So what did you think about it? Let me know down below. And remember to give me that context of your experience with The Witcher in general, because all I know about this world and this mythology is what is in season 1 and 2. That is my whole experience. I don't know how similar, how different, how much it represents. I don't know any of that. This is all I know. So you guys can help inform me of where potentially I can check other things out, other things to think about it. Let me know down below, and keep talking movies and TV too much.